Welcome back to Pen and Reel. I'm your host, Uncle Joel, and today I want to talk about East of West by Jonathan Hickman and Nick Dragotta. Now, prior to reading this series, I had become quite the fan of Jonathan Hickman. I had read some of his independent comics, such as The Nightly News and Transhuman, and I really came to appreciate the way he introduced and explored these very complex ideas. I'm a big fan of complex writers that explore very high concepts, such as Grant Morrison, Warren Ellis, Alan Moore, and so on. And so Jonathan Hickman is very much in a similar vein, and so it's only natural that I really gravitated towards his work. So when I heard that he was coming out with his own ongoing series at Image Comics, I was very intrigued. Knowing very little about it, I instantly put it on my pull list and dove in blind. And let me tell you, it's a wild ride. Now, this story takes place in an alternate America. It's set a little bit in the future, but at the same time, it's very much an alternate history. America is split into multiple different nation states. It makes for a very diverse, very unique setting. Now, this is a very political book, but it's also got a lot of action. And one of the things that makes the book so interesting and entertaining is the high-energy, kinetic art style of Nick Dragotta. But I think the thing that makes the book the most compelling is just the wide array of story types that this book mashes together. If you wanted me to break down what kind of story it is, it's honestly very difficult to say, because it pulls elements from just about every genre. And probably the best way I could think of to describe it is, it's like Game of Thrones meets Man in the High Castle, part Mad Max, part Star Wars, part anime, except it's a futuristic samurai western starring the Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse. There's tons of religious symbolism in here, there's tons of politics, there's warring nations. It's very much a futuristic sci-fi story, yet it's very western. It stars samurais and cowboys and, like I said, the Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse. The main character is Death, who rides this weird robotic horse-like thing that shoots lasers. This book is just all over the place, and yet it's not random. It all fits together very cohesively. Now, it's been a long time since I've read this series, and I didn't keep up with it until it finished. So now that I have the complete collection, I'm going back and rereading it. So I can't really comment on how well it wraps up, but at least the way it starts out, it just throws out so many interesting ideas and such a unique setting that it was very difficult not to be drawn in. And so the basic gist of the story is, the main character, the hero of the story, is Death, one of the Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse. And he's decided that he doesn't want to have anything to do with the apocalypse. He just wants to live his life and basically be a normal person. And the reason that he has decided this is because Death has fallen in love with a human. And not only has he fallen in love with her, he has had a child with her. And so in that sense, this is kind of a romance between Death and this human woman. But the child has been taken away from them, and he is being raised as the Beast. He's hooked up to a virtual reality AI that is training him to see the world in twisted and dark ways. And the people that have hooked him up to this machine are these people called the Chosen. You see, they believe in this apocryphal scripture called the Message, which points towards the apocalypse. And the Four Horsemen show up to fulfill the message and bring about the apocalypse and bring about the end times. And so the Chosen are here to facilitate that, and that is why they have captured this child and are raising him as the Beast and are brainwashing him into seeing the world in these twisted ways. And with America split into these different nations, it's a very tense political situation, and everybody kind of has to try to work together if they are the chosen from their respective nations in order to support the Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse and bring about the apocalypse because they believe so strongly in the message. So it's an uneasy alliance between people that don't trust one another. They are all working towards their own ends, and yet having to kind of attempt to get along with one another. This is a very complex tale of revenge, romance, the end of the world, fate, free will, religion, science, and so much more. Now, a lot of people have difficulty with Jonathan Hickman's character work, and I would say that's probably his weakest point. He gets very caught up in the high stakes concepts and the politics of everything, so that his characterizations are frequently kind of taking a backseat. So if you need really strong character work, that's probably Jonathan Hickman's weakest point. But personally, I would say while he doesn't have the strongest character work, it's also not bad character work in my mind. And there are just so many other strengths to this book that I can kind of forgive that. Now, Hickman does get caught up in all of the high concepts stuff that he is playing with, and he can kind of get lost in it. And so at times it can be difficult to follow unless you're like following along really closely. But that does tend to be a commonality of writers like this. A lot of people have difficulty understanding what Grant Morrison is going for. It often seems like he's the only one who really understands his own work. And I would say that Hickman can kind of go that direction, so this isn't a light casual read, but at the same time, it's written in such a way that if you don't want to get caught up in the deep conceptual aspect of it, you can just get lost in the wild setting and just go along for the ride. And again, I would attribute quite a bit of that to Nick Dragotta's art. Now, a couple years ago, there was talks of making this into a TV show, and I feel like the idea was that they were capitalizing on the success of The Walking Dead, and that they would probably try to go for something kind of in a similar tone to something like Game of Thrones. But I feel like the show would have had to be an extremely high-budget show in order to even remotely pull off all of the special effects that would be required for it. There would be intensive wardrobe and makeup, at the very least, tons of green screen, special sets, CGI, animation, you name it. In order to pull this off, it would have been extremely expensive. So personally, I would say they should absolutely pursue making this into a TV show, but they should take a page from Netflix and their Castlevania show. Do a high-budget, anime-style animated show. I think that's the only way to pull this off without spending billions of dollars on it. So whether you're exploring East of West for the high concept work, or for just the wild setting and seeing how all of these different concepts crash together, I would highly recommend this book to at least check it out. I would say if the first trade doesn't have you interested in what's to come, then you're probably not going to like what comes after. But considering that the first trade is pretty cheap, if you're at all interested in anything that I just described for the wild setting and just the crazy concepts being thrown about, I would say definitely check it out. So I'm going to be continuing my journey through East of West. Might do a video per trade, might break it up a little bit more, not really certain yet. We'll see. I'm also going to be diving into covering Saga per the request of J.A. Laughlin. Make sure you hit subscribe so you don't miss out on any of that. If you could help me out by hitting a like, leaving a comment, I'd really appreciate it. And until next time, this is Uncle Joel saying, stay tangible.